Oh, we're going live?
Mm-hmm.
I cannot believe you're gonna let people listen to me. That's crazy.
I mean, they gotta listen to me too. I have no uh,
I
plan
hope
for
they
this.
survive.
Yeah, well, if they make it to this, we need to figure out a way to make the beginnings of the podcast more interesting. Because last week's was very much a yawn fest, quite literally. That's like the first thing I did was yawn, and so I don't want to do the podcast anymore because I'm tired.
Hey, I mean, it's it's a lot better than starting a Gen 2 install and being like, yeah, I have no patience for this. Um, that I was like, okay, yeah, we're watching this. This is gonna be gold.
Hey, you wanna? I made it through there.
You did. You did, and I was very surprised.
I have stories about Gen 2. We'll talk about that once. Um, Live stream today. Yes, technically today is our Thursday stream. It's Friday, but it's our Thursday stream. We stream every Thursday, but it's Friday.
Yeah. Somebody, myself, was busy.
I mean, it was
So
either this or take a day, a week off. And honestly, I would have been perfectly fine with that answer as well. Quite, it's okay. We're doing stuff. We're doing it. We're gonna do a podcast. We got a topic. You've probably seen the thumbnail. Those of you who are watching live. If speaking of that, if you can say yay or nay if the audio is good or bad,
yes.
we'd be
And while we're
appreciative.
getting people saying yay or nay, give me 1 second. I gotta make sure because I can't see Buddy nowhere, and I gotta make sure he is not gonna tear up the house or anything.
Buddy would never do such a thing. All right. Yep. We're going to do a podcast. It's going to probably go on for about an hour and a half or so. Usually does. So we'll just do the normal BSing like we normally do. If you're watching this after the fact, we're going to work on the intros. I know that our intros that are on YouTube afterwards aren't all that great, but we'll see how it goes. The last week's was particularly bad. So it got better once I woke up, but that took about half an hour in for me to actually, wake up and stop yawning because I was yawning like crazy last week, and now I'm keep saying the word yawn, and I'm gonna start yawning again.
It happens. It happens. You know. Okay. At least audio is good on my end. I'm very surprised. Seems like every week it's a hit or miss.
I honestly, with me being on a completely different distro, I thought something would go completely wrong, but so far it seems to be working just fine. So I probably should find some wood too.
Well, I'm just super excited to hear about your daily driver and distro wise and see if that has changed.
It has
One,
changed,
yes,
but
I
not.
suspected as much, and I hope to hear glorious revelations on your
Yeah.
experience and how the future is going to be for yourself. See a lot of waiting in your future,
No.
hopefully. Don't,
No. All right, let's go and get started
don't.
because I'm gonna go ahead and I want to talk about that. All right, you ready to
I
go?
want to hear it. Yes, sir.
All right, I'm gonna hit record in Audacity. I'm gonna hit record in OBS, and you can do the claps whenever you like.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
We weren't even close.
On my end, that sounded pretty close.
The latency looked really bad there. Let's try again. Why
All right.
not?
3, 2, 1.
That was better. Maybe it was worse. I don't know.
Literally, both of them on my end sound super close to
The thing
each
is,
other.
every time we start, like right now, you're perfectly in sync. Like, but the minute you started counting, you started going Japanese movie on me. It'll be okay.
Discord.
Discord is so bad. Oh man. Like why is 720p even an option? What is this, 1998? I mean, seriously.
One day we'll get the privilege of 1080p. One day.
No, we'll never will do that. Okay, so here's the funny thing is that they've started rolling out the ability for people in the Discord servers to actually support you, like monetary, like something like Patreon. And it was exclusive to like higher end servers, but now a lot of people can do it. My server's still not there, still can't do it. You gotta have 500 members, and it had some really weird like restrictions on it. But like, why would you do that through Discord? I mean, at least it's better than Nitro, because at least then you're supporting the creator. But
yeah.
I don't know. We bitch about Nitro.
But even then,
so
it would worry me because I don't know how much Discord's taking percentage wise, and I don't trust them to take less or the same amount that Patreon's taking. Like, I don't see Discord being the nice guys. Like, you know.
No, I really don't. It feels kind of shady every once in a while. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. I think I'm all ready to go. I got the news up. I got the notes up. So let's go. All right. Hey everybody, welcome back to Linux Cast. I'm your host Matt,
And I'm Tyler.
So yes, this is the Linux Cast. We talk about Linuxy things usually, and as I say every week, this is the week we're not going to have any tangents whatsoever.
Okay. All right. Sure. Okay. I'm sure somebody believes us.
All right. Yeah, nobody believes us. If you vote, I mean, there's probably that one guy like, oh, well, that's nice. No tangents. The guy, they're just going to stay right on topic. Yeah. No.
No.
I'm watching in 360p. All right. Anyways, so anyways, the Linux Cast. We got to do the podcast, Matt. Time to get your head in the game. So Tyler, what have you done in the FOSS world this week?
Well, if I'm being completely honest, this week has been kind of crazy for me because I've been out of town. The 28th, I left like on a flight to Colorado and helped one of my Discord members, archsinner. Some people will probably know him or have heard of him. But I went over to his house and helped him move and drove back down. So I just got back like last night. And so I haven't really been doing much at all with the computer, YouTube. I didn't really post anything because I mean, it's just moving and then driving. It's like there's nothing really exciting there to like document other than like, oh, hey, we're driving through Kansas. Look, there's nothing here. Like, that's pretty much it.
Oh yeah, we just went through Iowa. Hey, look, there's some corn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but now that I'm back, so I'm using Windows right now just because I needed to mess around with Unreal Engine and get something done really quick. And if you know anything about Unreal Engine and Epic, they're not really great at, you know, like supporting Linux, but you can actually build Unreal Engine from source on Linux. You just can't get it like for a download like binary straight from the launcher, obviously. So I just went ahead and installed Windows because I needed to get working on it, and that would be much easier than downloading all of the source code for Unreal Engine 5 and then compiling it. Because if anybody here has no idea, Unreal Engine is massive in size and it definitely takes about as long, if not much longer, than Firefox to compile. It's pretty gnarly. So, but I am going to go ahead and put Linux back on here as my host machine, and then just do a KVM setup and pass my graphics card through to a VM, and just do that for Windows if I need to do anything in Windows from now on, because I don't really like having it as my host, like at all, like main host system. It's okay to do stuff in, like, you know, like when you need to use Windows, it's okay, but like there's just a lot of stuff that I would prefer to have kind of like put down in a VM, like kind of containerized, and kind of do the Mutahar approach. But I have no idea what I'm going to pick for my host machine. I was really liking Debian, but I feel like I should like try something else, just spruce it up.
Should definitely be Gen 2. So it is too bad that you have that mini toy motherboard thing that doesn't have an appropriate number of, PCIe slots, because if you had a regular size motherboard, they have these NVIDIA graphics cards. They have no ports on them whatsoever, and you can get them on eBay for like $25-$30. And you could just use that as your VM GPU, because it doesn't need a ports on it and stuff.
The way that like a virtual machine, like doing the KVM pass through and stuff typically works out is you can't really use the like splice, like the built-in like VM display thing that they give you, because it like you can't actually get 60 FPS from it. It actually like it's really hard to get it above 1 hertz.
Craft Computing was showing how to do it, so I'm not sure. There was some workaround he had to get it to work, but it looked really cool. I'm not sure what his end performance was, but it sounded.
I'll
really
have to
cool.
look at that. Because as far as I've ever done is like you just pass through the graphics card and then you just switch your monitor to that output, and then you have like your Windows VM on the monitor, and you'll get full display, like well, not just obviously resolution, but also like refresh rate. But I haven't tried it out, so I need to do that. But hopefully, as soon as like, because now I've got time, I got a lot farther in the project that I need to get done in Unreal. So I kind of have time to compile it. So I'm hoping that I really don't need to use the Windows VM like ever. But because really, Unreal Engine's the only reason I'm using it now.
I have a feeling I know the answer to this, but how does Unreal Engine work with Wine? So could you just use Wine to do it?
No. Okay. Just
I'll try.
No.
What about bottles?
Wait, what?
What about bottles?
What do you mean bottles?
There's a app called Bottles that helps you run Windows applications on Linux.
Highly doubt it. Like, just because Unreal Engine is a massively complex program.
Very GPU dependent, probably, right?
Yes. Very GPU dependent, but also very, I mean, it's both GPU and CPU dependent. It's a gorgeous engine. It's absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, it's really nice, but that's pretty much what I've been up to.
All right.
So let's get to you. I'm interested to hear what you've been up to.
Let me take you through a story, shall we? So Sunday night. So actually, it started later last week. I tweeted out that if the Warriors won their series in the Western Conference Finals, that I would install Gen 2, and they won. So on Sunday night I paid that bet and streamed me installing Gen 2. And despite somehow messing up the Kubuntu live environment right at the beginning of the stream, it went perfectly fine. Got it installed, and I was going to use that. Originally, my plan was to install that on my main hard drive, like my NVMe 1 terabyte drive, and use Gen 2 as my actual daily driver. Like Arco was going away because I wanted Arco to go away because they've been changing so much stuff. And I don't really care for the direction that they're going anymore. So I was going to find a new thing, and Gen 2 was going to be it. And it installed fine. And the next day, with a little bit of help from Ben and Josh, I was able to get everything up and running just fine. And it was actually working better this time than it did the last time I got installed. Like everything, there's no screen tearing. I was able to get i3 up and running, Polybar up and running, all my configs, all my applications there, even like Crusader and, a couple other like really big apps that were all compiled and everything was working. And then I was prodded into installing SDDM, and I did that and it worked fine. It installed fine. I rebooted, got into SDDM, the display manager, and the keyboard and the mouse would not work. So I sat there and waited for like 5 minutes, and eventually the mouse started working, and I was able to put the cursor or the I-beam in the text box to type my password in. Got the password working, and the keyboard started working then. So I was like, well, screw this. I'll just go back to the way it was before and just use StartX. So I uninstalled SDDM, removed it from OpenRC, and changed the appropriate file back to the way it was so that it knew I was using StartX instead of using SDDM. And rebooted the computer, got into it. It loaded fine into the TTY, but the keyboard wouldn't work. Like, the keyboard wouldn't work at all in the TTY. So I was like, well, you know what? Maybe there's, something going wrong with the USB port or something like that. So I switched to a different USB port. Like, I know that the keyboard is fine because the keyboard is brand fucking new. So, and like, the keyboard is fine. Plus, it was working fine before the whole SDDM thing, right? So, no matter what I did, if I could not get the keyboard to work, and even unplugging it and plugging it back in, like, once the keyboard would turn on. So, like, it has like a RGB underglow, right? And so when the PC turns on, that light comes on. When I and it would stay on into the TTY. But if I unplugged it and the keyboard and plugged it back in, it would not turn back on. Like, the RGB would just stay completely blank. So that Gen 2 install was completely borked. And well, I left it on there for a little while, and Ben helped me a little bit, and I got on r/Gen2 on Reddit and asked the question. The only help that I got on r/Gen2 was, well, obviously your keyboard's broken. Like, I'm an idiot. I'm not that much of an idiot. Plus, it was working just fine on Arco, which I still had installed, right? So I was like, well, you know what? My NVMe is getting pretty full. Like, I only had like 20% free space on my NVMe. So I got on Amazon, ordered myself a 2 terabyte Sabrent drive, NVMe, and got that here. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to put this in my computer. I'm going to install Gen 2 on it. But this time, I'm going to be bold. I'm going to do it all by myself.
I like it.
That did not go well. It went fine up until I got to gen kernel. And then I did the gen kernel -- all thing that says in the handbook. Apparently somewhere along the line in the kernel section, I skipped a step, and I don't know which one it was because the help that I got online wasn't all that helpful. But anyways, it said that a certain file in /user something Linux was not found. Like, it just would not go through. Not sure why. And I copied the error.
You might have skipped symlinking the kernel, like at the beginning.
It's possible.
Like,
The error help that I found online when I searched the error, they said that I missed. I don't remember the part that it said I missed, but anyways, I did the part that they said I missed, and it still didn't work. So I gave up. Like, I was just done with it. So I downloaded the Arch ISO and put Arch on here on that new drive, and it is working fantastically. Like, it's been working so good. I'm honestly quite surprised, because usually I have a huge problem with vanilla Arch. Usually I spend like 2 or 3 weeks like, oh my god, I forgot to uninstall that. I forgot to install that. So there's always these dependencies and stuff like that that I'm missing. For it, like, takes me like 2 weeks to get the computer back to where I need it to be. This time I said, fuck it, I'm writing an install script. So I wrote an install script for all my applications, all my symlinks and stuff like that. I did a script for that. So that was really good. Yeah, so I'm back on Arch. I have not given up the dream of Gen 2, but Ben has been talking me into something called Redcore. So I'm going to try Redcore. It's apparently a Gen 2 based distribution.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, neither had I. Like, I'd heard of the other two, Calculate and Sabian, or whatever the hell it's called.
Yeah.
But yeah, Redcore is apparently the Manjaro of Gen 2. So, gonna give that a try. Not on this drive.
I don't know that that's a selling point for me.
I don't know. Manjaro back in the day was a good alternative to Arch. Before Arch had a whole bunch of Arch-based distributions, Manjaro was the thing that you'd want to use. So maybe that's the thing. So I don't know. Yeah. So My experience this last week with Linux has been an interesting one. I will install Gen 2 again someday, but I've learned that I can't do it by myself. Like one of the comments on my stream from Sunday was like, "Yeah, this was really interesting, but it seems like your friend mostly did most of it for you." For you. Like, yes, that's true, but I did learn stuff. Like I was, reading the guidebook and stuff. Like, but
That's the important part.
it was
It took me like 5 to 6 installs before I could do it on my own, like, and have it be successful and like fully functioning and not miss anything. Like Gen 2 takes time. Like it's a little bit more convoluted than an Arch install. Like just is. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but it's just definitely more
well,
convoluted.
I even went the see, I went both easier and harder this time on my own because I didn't do the Butterfest thing, even though I really like Butterfest having it on my main system. So I was like, you know what, fine, I'll just stick with the XT4. But because all the instructions are assuming that you have UEFI, I decided I would just do a UEFI install. And I've never done a UEFI install of any Linux distribution. So, but I take that back now. This Arch install is UEFI. So,
Oh, okay.
so I cannot no longer say that. So, Zero Linux sent you some messages. Oh, I don't check mail very often. No, I'm really bad at that.
Yes. I'm the
I
worst.
think you sent me like a voice message on Anchor, but I don't even know how to listen to it. So, email probably would be the best way to get in contact me. Anyways, all right. So that's what we've been doing in FOSS this week. It's been fantastic in that I've done a lot of stuff and learned some stuff, but other than that, thing. Anyway, so moving on to the contact information. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can do so in any number of ways. You can email us at email at thelinuxcast.org, I think it is. Actually, I don't have that written here. Why do I not have the email thing? That's like the one thing that I should mention. But anyways, all of our contact information you can find at thelinuxcast.org/contact. Speaking of the linuxcast.org, that is the website. It is amazing and well updated. /sarcasm. It's not well updated, but it is there. It does exist. If you want to find all of our past episodes, you can find all of the few blog posts that I've created. Those things are there. And you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/linuxcast. You can follow Zany. Tyler goes by Zany Online. I always mix that up. It's like Willy Wonka all over again. Tyler goes by Zany Online. You can follow him on YouTube, youtube.com/ZanyOG. Discord, he has all that stuff. So those links will also be at youtube.com, or not youtube.com, thelinuxcast.org/contact. So also make sure you subscribe to the Linuxcast, youtube.com/thelinuxcast. You'll find there a whole bunch of content. Like, I'm pretty sure I just went over 500 videos, which is just, I mean, seriously. I've never done 500 of anything in my entire life. The fact that I've done 500 videos is nuts, especially in like a year and a half. Like, that's crazy sauce. Anyways, so youtube.com/thelinuxcast. If you haven't subscribed already, I do appreciate it. Anyways, so Tyler, every week, you and I, we scour the interwebs for the most latest breaking exclusive news. We call our sources and ask them what's going on in the world of FOSS, and they get back to us with these amazing things. So Tyler, what is your news of the week?
Mine is about DuckDuckGo and it, acting funky for the past little bit. This is an article. It's from like a couple weeks ago, but I'm pretty sure we've all heard stuff about DuckDuckGo very recently, and there's a lot of debates over whether or not they're really protecting your privacy, because not too long ago there was the whole DuckDuckGo kind of got caught, like, because of their agreement. They have an agreement with Microsoft, so they can't really block all of Microsoft's trackers and stuff like that. There's in this article here, they're talking about they were not purging YouTube DL or the Pirate Bay from their search results, but you can go down here and they actually have on this is The Verge, which I'm not a massive fan of The Verge at all, but if you need a great PC build video that's so terrible it can make you just cry your eyes out,
Oh,
please go watch it.
that poor guy who did that. Like, he was an idiot, but he did not deserve the hate that he, like, he has internet fame forever.
Yes, yes. It's fantastic. It's a great laugh. If you're feeling down, just go watch The Verge's PC build. Trust me, you'll have a good laugh.
No, don't do that. Watch the reaction videos on YouTube to the YouTube views, because some of them are absolutely hilarious. Like, they're better than
that's the best way to watch the original video, is with someone commentating on it who builds computers professionally.
Usually, I can't stand reaction videos. Like, I can't. It's just lazy ass like I do lazy content. Like, I think we all know I do lazy content.
I do too.
I'm very happy with some lazy content, but reaction videos, they're just so lazy. Like, seriously, all you're doing is watching a video and occasionally commenting on it, and usually when you're commenting on it, you're being an asshole to the person you're reacting to, and that just doesn't sit well with me. But I know those Verge ones, I don't care. Be an asshole. Those are hilarious.
Those are great. Like, the people's reaction, like, because they're like, you can tell some people like actually physically recoil at some of the things that he does. It's great. It's fantastic.
It's like those videos you see every once in a while, somebody building a PC, instead of putting the paste on top of the CPU, they squeeze out the entire tube right onto the pins. Like, no, don't do that. That's not how it's supposed to work.
But with DuckDuckGo, they have a little animation thing that you can see where they actually show that they were actually, like, it wasn't being found, and then it is being found like a week later after they got essentially called out on it. So it's up for debate whether or not it was just the Pirate Bay was down or whatever. Like, there's a whole bunch of controversy with DuckDuckGo right now, and I kind of just wanted to talk about it. Are you still using DuckDuckGo? And by still using, I know you never were like a massive fan of it because you'd constantly have to like just use the Google shebang. But are you using DuckDuckGo now?
Okay, so,
like, what's your opinion on it as of late?
Well, I mean, obviously DuckDuckGo feels like they've been purchased by Mozilla. Like, they've transitioned from being a privacy-focused search engine company to being a company that is more interested in figuring out how they're going to make their next dollar. And everything they do feels like they're trying to push forward into making more and more money, which is fine. You got to support yourself, and you got to pay for the developers. So, like, but the thing I've like. Honestly, their interest in making more money to support their development work would be fine if they actually had development work. Like, they don't have their own search results. Like, they use Bing. They're basically a front end for Bing, for the most part, right?
Well, I mean, I think it's debatable, but I think for the most part, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, so that's where they get their search results, and then they do something to make them worse than Bing, which is like whatever development work they're doing, basically they take Bing and make it somehow worse, which I'm not actually sure how you accomplish that, but they did in fact do it. But to answer your question, no, I don't actually use DuckDuckGo. I don't think that surprises anybody. What will surprise people is that for the last 2 months, I've been using Cirx as my main search engine, and it is really good. Like, I mean, it is fantastically good. If you get yourself an instance, whether you use someone else's or your own, and you get the settings set up just right so that you can get search results from like a whole bunch of different search engines, Google, DuckDuckGo, Bing, like all of them, like they're all there, and you can get it set up just so that they're ranked in the appropriate way. It's really good. Now, there still are times when I find myself going to Google, but maybe twice a week. Usually it has to do with image search, because the image search isn't all that great on Cirx. But other than that, I use Cirx full time now. Like, it's even on my phone, I use a Cirx instance. So It's that good. Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna do my own search engine instance one of these days. I've been told both that it's really hard and really easy, so I don't know which it is.
But yeah, that's my article, and I think most people are moving away. Like I didn't even know that they had a deal with Microsoft. So like I was like, wait, what? Like,
Well,
huh?
I think their big problem is that like I said, they're trying to be Mozilla in some ways. And like Mozilla has this big deal with Google, right? That's where Mozilla gets all their money from. And I think that DuckDuckGo, I mean, I don't know the truth behind this or not, but it feels like they're trying to do the same thing, but with Microsoft, so that Microsoft kind of supports them, especially in their browser space. Like they want to create this browser, right? And in order to do that, they need to have some money, because there's a big difference between taking Bing's search results and doing minimal stuff to it and then presenting it as your own search engine, and actually creating like a web browser like that is good and people want to use. Like there's a big difference between that, because
Wait, hold on. Are you sure? Because like pretty much everyone I know is just taking Chromium and they're being like, we got our own custom extensions.
yeah, they're not doing that though, dude. They're not using Chromium at all.
Oh, so they're building from the ground up?
No, they're not doing that either.
Oh my.
No. Okay, this is why their browser is so fucking confusing. Cause so what they're doing, at least when they first announced it, what they're doing, I don't know where they're at now, but their announced intentions were that they were going to use the system-specific browser engine on whatever OS they're using. So if they're using like iOS, they'd use Safari. If they were using Windows, they'd use Edge, which I guess would be Chromium. If they're using Mac, they'd use Safari again. If they're using Linux, who the fuck knows what they're going to do, because Linux does not have a default browser base. Maybe they'd use Firefox on. That's why I was so confused. Like when we talked about this on the show, when they announced this, like, because it doesn't make any sense that they're not going to have like one base browser that they're going to base themselves. Like we had just assumed that it would be Chromium, but it's not actually Chromium all the way across the board. It was really weird.
If we talked about this, I've totally forgotten about it. This is so weird.
It's been
like,
about 6
how's
months.
that even?
It's been about 6 months or so. I don't know how well it's working for them, because it's only available right now on Mac. I don't know. I don't know why they'd come up with this idea, right? Because
It just sounds like so much extra work.
well, not only that, but by basing yourself on the platform's default browser, you're giving that platform power over your browser. So,
or just what happens if the platform changes its default browser?
That, or when things are like Edge and Safari are not the same browser, so they don't render the internet in the same way. Just like the same Firefox and Chromium, not the same browser. They use different engines. So that means that you could use DuckDuckGo on Windows and have your websites render in one way. Use your DuckDuckGo browser on the Mac and have them render in a completely different way. Like you'd be using the same browser, but it'd be using a different engine. It's just so weird.
To each their own, you know? Like, go for it. I hope it works out for them. Doesn't sound like the brightest plan I've ever heard, but then again, I'm just an idiot on the internet, so like, what do I know? Maybe it'll work out great for them.
When they first announced it, everybody was so excited, like, oh, we're gonna have a third, browser based, maybe like they would create their own engine, right? That was the dream. Like, finally, someone else is coming around. Maybe they'll do for Mozilla what Mozilla was hoping to do with Firefox and has failed. But no, that's not what they seem to be doing. So, yeah. All right. So moving on to I said it just a few minutes ago, but DuckDuckGo feels like the new Mozilla. Like Mozilla is dead. We don't have to talk about them anymore. Like, yeah, people still use their Firefox, and I still use it, but Mozilla is dead. We don't need to talk about them anymore. Now we can bitch about DuckDuckGo being an open source company, or not even an open source company. They're more like a private, quote unquote, privacy respecting company that is not so interested in your privacy.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right,
Like
so
I just like the irony in a privacy focused company being like, yeah, we're not allowed to block Microsoft trackers. Like, what? That's awesome. It's like the irony is just palpable. It's great.
like
It's fantastic.
we're a privacy focused company, except when
Yeah,
like, there are exceptions. If you have enough money, you can send us that money, and you'll be one of the exceptions.
yeah. Like it. It's just like our mission statement. It changes with how much money is in front of us.
You know, as a poor bastard, I don't blame them. If Microsoft wanted to send me, millions of dollars, you'd all be fucking tracked, man. Like, I don't care. Like, my ass is going to the Bahamas. Good Lord. All right, moving on to my news of the week. So mine's a little bit less controversial, at least I'd think it would be. But Arch has a new menu-based installer. It does not come. So they have had for probably about a year now, like an installer that comes with the actual ISO. It's actually on the ISO. It's called Arch Install. It would run you through a series of prompts in order to install Arch. And it started off pretty bad, but got better over time. This one here does not come installed on the ISO. You would have to install it. It's called Arch Install as well. So you just do sudo dash capital S Arch Install, and it'll replace the one that's on there. But this one here is a menu-based system. So I'd like to say that I've seen this kind of thing before. It does kind of look familiar. It's not really end curses, but it's similar along those lines where you choose each option you want for your install through a menu system, and it just will install Arch Linux. It's supposedly really good. Brody did a review on it. It looked really fantastic then. And the one thing that I wanted to talk about here is, what do we think about Arch actually having an installer of its own? Because the whole idea of Arch Linux, at least if you ask the Arch bros, is that you have to install it yourself. The journey of installing vanilla Arch Linux is the reason why you install Arch Linux. Because if you didn't, that's the reason why every time someone says, well, I use Arch, but you're using Arco. You're not using Arch. How dare you use an Arch-based distro and call it Arch? You're obviously a faker, you know? So
I kind of like this move though. Like, I don't know about you, but this kind of makes it really hard to be the Arch like douchebag. Like where you're like the reason I use Arch is because it's really hard. Like it's really hard to install, and like not everybody can do it. Like the Arch team has been making a massive push towards making Arch just easier for anybody to install, like regardless of what the argument is. It's just objectively more easy to install. Kind of makes the Arch community need to have a shift towards like, you've got a problem, how can we make it easy to solve, not just be like, read the manual and follow the 17 steps, you'll be fine. Like, I don't think Arch isn't really that way, but like sometimes for a new user, they think it's going to be that complicated, and when you just get told to like go solve it yourself, like there's the man page, or
yeah,
like read the documentation,
read
like
the effing manual, right? Yeah.
yeah, like when you go to a long like see like here's the thing, like with a big program like that's got a lot of different stuff, like like the Xorg page, there's a lot of different shit on that page. Even though installing Xorg is like right there, it's a super easy part. When someone's unfamiliar and they see that table of contents, like they might be like, holy shit. Like it's I don't know, there's always the great people who will just like link you to that section in the documentation. And like those are the really great people that like in pretty much every Linux community, where like instead of just telling you to go read the documentation, they tell you to go read the documentation, but they link to the specific part that's relevant for you. Like I think that's just like, if you're going to be helping someone and you're going to tell them that their question or their problem is already answered, it's very simple, and it's in the documentation, instead of just saying that, like link to that specific section,
Yeah.
especially with stuff like Arch where they have they have those links that can take you to a specific section of the documentation. That's really how you should provide help. And I don't know, things like this kind of just make it easier to get into Arch, like just mainline Arch compared to other distributions that are spinoffs. I like it. I think it's a good thing.
As
You?
a longtime Arch-based distro user, so like Arco for the longest time was my thing. I don't have a lot of room to stand and say that this is a bad thing, right? I think that in some ways, this is probably the best thing that ever happened to Arch Linux, in that Arch, like Gentoo in many ways, is very, like you were saying, it's very intimidating sometimes when you go to that install page in the Arch wiki. You know, it can be very, very intimidating. Like there's a lot of stuff there. Like for the longest, for the longest time when I first tried, I was going to do my first Arch install on a laptop without an Ethernet cable, and this was back when before they redid the Wi-Fi menu stuff. So this was when it was much harder to actually connect to the internet through Wi-Fi, and I never, not once, got past that point, and that was always the point where I just give up. Like, this is too hard to connect to the internet. Like, it should just, why is this not just easy to connect to the internet? Like, and it wasn't, right? I mean, it is now. Like, now it's not hard at all. But the documentation then, even for connecting to the internet, was all over the place. Like they said, if they gave you instructions on how to do it if you were connected to Ethernet, which is fine, and just move past this. But if you wanted to connect via Wi-Fi, you had to click on this, and you had to find the drivers that you were supposed to be using. You had to find the name of your network card, and it was all this stuff. Like, it was a pain in the ass, and I never got past. Like, I was a complete noob at Linux, anyways. Trying to do that just was completely over my head. So I can see something like this menu where it's just way easier. Like, it's basically an Arch-based distro now, but it's not, because it's actually vanilla Arch. You're basically using an Arch install script is basically what you're doing, right? And I think that's a good thing. I think once they get this menu system perfected, that it should come installed on the ISO. Like, this should take over for the Arch install that is on there once they get it perfected, right? I think that'd be great. I don't know.
And then, I mean, there will always be I don't know, like, I think some people, like, are afraid that if they do something like this, you won't be able to install Arch, like, the old manual way, and I don't think that's ever going to change. Like, you'll still be able to leave the installer and, like, just do it manually, if that's something that, like, you enjoy, or, like, that's a part that, like...
If you are a masochist and would like to go through the pain of installing it the traditional way, I mean, it's not actually that painful, but I mean, it could come across as that painful if it can. Well, I mean,
it's not as easy. Like, I mean, there's obviously a reason they're working on this, because it would make it easier and quicker. But if you want to do it the old way, you want to make sure everything's done your way, like how you see fit. I don't think Arch is ever going to be like, that's not an option anymore. Like, that's not what Arch is. So, I don't know. Like, it can't really be a bad thing that Arch is getting easier to install for more people. Like, it can't be a bad thing.
Now, Gentoo, you need to do something similar. You need to be easier to install, Gentoo. It's going to be good. All right. Before we move on, a couple things I need to take care of. I didn't thank Zero Linux for the $5 super chat. I do appreciate that. I just read it. I should have said thank you. So thank you. Also, Mislav, thanks for the super sticker. I think that's what that's called, a super sticker. A super emoji, something. I don't know what that's actually called, but thank you for that as well. Somebody asked me if I've done an Arch install, like living it for a month. I'm actually using Arch right now, as I said at the beginning. Like, it's basically like living in Arco, by the way, because I like, everybody has this saying, right? Like, your Arch-based distro, that's not Arch. Like, I'm sorry, yes it is. Okay, yes it is. Just because I did not install Arco the same way you install Arch doesn't mean that it's not Arch. It is Arch. And now you can make the argument that Manjaro is not Arch. You can make that argument because they don't pull from the Arch repos. Arco does. Arco's an
Yeah.
Arco's
I think the better statement is not every like spin-off distro is the same as the parent, but some definitely are. Like Ubuntu, like Linux Mint is not Ubuntu. But at the same time, like something like Pop OS, you could say is definitely like it's definitely Ubuntu. It's just better. Like it's improved. Again, not better. With every distro, it's like improvements for some people, like a portion of people. Like not everyone's going to benefit from the improvements that Pop OS makes on Ubuntu. Some people are going to be fine with Ubuntu and prefer it. Like that's
yeah.
fine. But it's the same thing with Arco. Like Arco is Arch. Like
And someone
it's just
in the comments said that it's bloated and comes with a whole bunch of stuff. That is true. It's Arch with a whole bunch of stuff on top of it. That's true. My judgment on whether or not an Arch-based distro is basically Arch is whether or not it pulls from the same repositories as Arch does. Arco does, therefore, it is an Arch. It's Arch. All right. Yes, it has other repositories out on top. Like Arco has its own repositories, but also has Arch's repositories. So it is Arch. Manjaro, like on the other side, it doesn't pull from the Arch repositories. It pulls from its own repositories first and only. Therefore, not Arch. It's an Arch-based distro. It's a stupid argument, I understand, but it always like one of the things if you've ever used an Arch-based distro and you're using an Arch-based distro that is not well supported, like it doesn't have a very big community, maybe it's really small or something. So you're like, well, I'm using an Arch-based distro. It's basically Arch. I'm going to go to the Arch forums and try to get help. If you try to get help and tell them you're using an Arch-based distro, see their reaction. It's it's like you've jumped into a pool of piranhas, and they're all going to rip you to little bitsy pieces. They're very not interested in the people using Arch-based distros in the Arch. They want you to go get your support from the distro maintainer, which I can understand. Like in a way, like they don't want to support other people's work, but they could be a little bit more friendly about it. Anyways. That's it for the news. That's it for the news. So that means it's time to move on to the main topic, which we are 43 minutes in.
Mm-hmm.
Not a record.
No.
Not a record.
Pushing it.
We're getting there. We're not a record. Anyway, so the main topic this week. So one of the things that has kind of come up over the last 6 months or so as Linux has gotten more popular, like, or at least maybe not more popular, like as in more people using it, but more in the mainstream media, like since Linus did his thing and the Steam Deck came out and stuff like that. So, since that time, Linux has gotten at least, somewhat more popular in some, meaning of the word. There's been a lot of discussion about, from the very entrenched people in the Linux community, of whether or not we are happy that it's getting more popular, because there is a thought in the Linux community that Linux is better off as a small, very niche thing where, yes, it grows, a little bit, but for the most part, it's just the thing that has always been very much also, a wannabe Windows. What somebody described as a wannabe Windows the other day in one of my comments. But whatever you describe, is always their argument is that it's better off to say small. So Tyler, what do you think of this? Do you think that we even want Windows or Linux to win, quote unquote, win?
I totally understand the argument from a security standpoint. Like, it's better that it stays small for security, just because, like, and like, I don't know, like security and privacy, because really the reason security and privacy is like under attack is just for money. And if we're a small community, or even a more large community, but we're still a community that agrees that like we don't really spend money unless it's to donate to something that like we use often or very much enjoy.
And even then, let's be honest about this. The
We
vast
don't
majority of
give
people
as
are like,
much.
nah, maybe $1 or $2, but
Yeah.
mostly, nah.
Well, and it's because you're not really forced into like, well, I either
Right.
like you've got the option of, well, I've got $40 to give, so I'll spread it around to all these different projects. and help out all of them a little bit, and like companies would prefer like, no, like give us all that 40, like you choose one of us and hopefully we're the one, and we'll
Adobe's
take
like,
all the
give us $900 a month, and we will give
exactly.
you a piece of software that was developed in the 1990s.
And I understand that like a business, like it's not like I'm clueless or don't understand that's how business works. I understand that, but at the same time, it makes us less of a target when we're known as not being like very open to spending a lot of money. I mean, if you think about it, like it's kind of like, if you were going to rob someone, like if you were really bad off and you were going to rob someone, you probably wouldn't rob the like closest homeless dude to you. Like, like you'd probably rob someone who's like
It's
well off.
like those guys out in California who are are they're camping out at like fancy restaurants and then following the people in the really expensive cars home to rob them.
Yeah.
You don't follow the guy in a 1997 Chevrolet Beretta, okay?
I
Unless he has really nice spinners on it, in which case maybe you do.
mean, you just don't. I mean, you don't follow the guy with a beater up. Like it's just. It's, I understand that argument for Linux staying small, but I I think the fact that Linux is getting more popular is not like something that has to be addressed. Like it's a however you want to say it, like a byproduct, a symptom of just Linux getting better. Like and I think that's kind of obvious. Like Linux has not only supported more software, but it's just gotten more reliable. It's gotten better to use. It's
Easier to
gotten
install. Yep.
yeah, like it's across the board. Linux has gotten just much better,
Mm-hmm.
especially over the last 5 years. Even more so if you take into account 10 years. If
And
you go 10 years back, like the improvement is unbelievable on the Linux
yeah,
side.
10 years ago, try to play a Windows game on Linux.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
would probably rather run in front of a bus. Just saying, you'd have a better time.
your luck was real low, like
Yeah.
real low. But I mean, it's got it just across the board in every area. Linux has gotten better. Maybe you can make the argument that in security, it's gotten not as better just because there's more people using it. There's more projects springing up. There's more opportunity for vulnerabilities to be implemented or exploited.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for the large part, like that is just a symptom of everything else in Linux getting better and more people not just wanting to use it, but also develop for it.
Yeah.
And of course, if you have a large group of people that now want to develop for something, there's going to be a small few little douchebags who are like, I'm going to make malware. Like it's going to happen, but
Yeah.
I think that's something that we can deal with, and we're obviously like as FOSS, we're more set up to deal with it. There's a lot more people who would like and feel kind of good by giving some time to like audit FOSS code. Like like Microsoft or any other big company has to pay someone to audit their code. Nobody's really doing it or wants to do it in their free time. But we have a community of people that there's a small portion of that really do enjoy auditing code, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think we can handle it.
Okay. So I'm like you. I think that there's a part of me that understands the argument and even agrees with it. Like, some small part of my brain thinks that I don't want Linux to ever be more than 3 or 4% of the market, and maybe it never even will get there. And the reason why is because one of the things that I enjoy most about the Linux community is that it is small and it feels, it feels like, I mean, yes, we have our assholes. We have many assholes in the Linux community. Any community over the size of 3 has an asshole. If you have a community of 3 people, one of them is an asshole. It's like it's like the fourth Newton law or something. But but for the most part, the Linux community, because it's so small and insular, is very friendly, and it's very nice to interact. I mean, you and I have we are friends because of the Linux community, right?
Yes.
And you and Scott, friends because of the Linux community, right? You met through Discord, and you and I both have many different stories of meeting actual people that are now friends, because of this thing called Linux. And it's amazing. And I worry that if Linux was way more popular, like Windows more popular, like that size, it wouldn't be as easy to have, that kind of intimate experience between, a small group of people. And there is probably some truth to that, but I also think that if Linux were to get to that point, like where they're like 50% of the market, Linux would just continue to do what it always does, and it would fragment into smaller communities. So like you'd have the Arch community, you'd have the Gen 2 community, right? And those would then remain small enough where you'd still have that camaraderie amongst people who use the same stuff you do. And so I think that my fear of it becoming less community based, at least in the sense of the way it is now, it is kind of it just wouldn't happen that way. And
I really don't know, because I feel like if we all think about it for a second, like the majority of people who use Windows aren't the people you see on Windows support forums and like Windows communities. Like a lot of the people that use Windows are just your average Joe Smo who just uses it to do business shit on, and it cares nothing for what he runs.
They either run Chrome all day long and never go into a different application, or they open an Excel or something. Yeah. So you talked a lot about security, and that's really the biggest like argument people have against Linux getting big, right? And Glowsec in the chat said security by obscurity is what he was talking about, right? And there is some thing to that, but the thing is, like, Linux is not obscure. That's the thing, is like Linux is the most used operating system on the planet, whether you like it or not, and that's absolutely the truth. Like, we think it's Windows, but it's actually Linux, because if you count mobile and servers, it blows Windows out of the water. Okay, like, that's the thing. And so there is a ton of Linux malware and spyware and viruses and stuff out there, but they're not targeting random Ubuntu user. They're targeting the server space. That's where all the bad stuff happens, and that's because that's where they can make their money. like you're going to make a lot more money blackmailing, Amazon than you would by blackmailing Tyler. It's just law of economics. It's just the way it works. So the argument that the only way Linux can remain secure is by staying small doesn't really work for me, because it's already so big. Now, you could argue that if the desktop Linux got bigger, that there would be more chances for, spyware and stuff like that. And that's probably true. But the one thing that I've learned in 5 years of using Linux full time is that Linux is not perfect. There's always flaws. Like, there's tons of 0 days and, random root access things that, like, there was one on Ubuntu not so long ago that if you type the letter A over and over and over again, it would give you access to the system, immediately, right? Maybe it wasn't the letter A, but it was something like that, right? They discovered that one day, it was patched the next day, right? That's the thing about Linux that you don't really get on Windows. Like, when Windows has a problem, they have to wait until the next Tuesday to patch it, because they have a day for that. Windows, we have no patch days. If they find something, they will patch it. Now, there's an argument that, like, there's a lot of people using like really old kernels that no longer get updates or whatever, but that's a problem for everybody. Like, there's people still using Windows XP. That's not a problem that's unique to Linux. For the most part, if you're using Linux, you're probably using something that's still maintained. And that means that
even if it's old too, like you do have to make that pretty clear. Like, a lot of people are like, well, I mean, there's plenty of people using older versions of Ubuntu. It's like, yeah, but those are LTSs. Like, they're still getting support.
Canonical's still supporting like 14, like 1404 or whatever it is. Like, that's 8 years ago. They're still supporting that thing. Now, granted, the people who are using that are having to pay for that support, but whatever, you know. But my point is that when we find these things, not only do more people who able to look at the code, because that's the thing about open source, is you can look at the code, and that means people are finding the flaws much easier than they can with a small group of people at Microsoft, because those are the only people looking at the code there. You know, you have an entire community looking at the code, finding flaws, and when they find the flaws, because they're going to find them, because no software's perfect, it's almost immediately fixed if it's a huge security vulnerability, like almost immediately. Now, it doesn't mean that, like, there are some KDE bugs that, you know, haven't been fixed in 15 years. Okay, they're just, you know, they've been there forever, but, you know, that's just it. So bugs are going to be there. With everything.
But yeah, everything has old shit that just needs to be fixed, and they haven't gone back and done it. That's true with, as far as I know, it's the same with Windows, Linux, and even Apple software. Like, just there's shit that needs to be addressed that, like, everyone agrees needs to be addressed, but just, well, we haven't gotten around to it. We ain't got time. We got too much shit going on, which is.
KDE's problem is, like, we got other new features to add, man.
Well, exactly. They've got 15 every week. I mean, it's hard to go back and fix shit, okay?
They got priorities. I honestly, just the bottom line, I'm happy that Linux is getting more popular. I'm still pretty pessimistic on the idea of them of Linux actually being, like, hugely popular in the desktop space. Like, I think 5% of the desktop market is probably the peak, and we're not even close. Like, we're not there yet, ever, and maybe never will get there. So I'm very.
I just think that's realistic, though. I don't think that's very pessimistic. That's just realistic.
All right,
we would need a massive, like, Microsoft would have to turn into Linux, and then it would become massively popular.
Yeah, I'm not gonna point out any Linux YouTubers, but you'll know who I'm talking about. When the Steam Deck was announced, there were several Linux YouTubers that just got on there like, this is the year of the Linux desktop. This is, you know, this thing is going to make Linux. Linux is all of a sudden going to become the most popular operating system. And then they proceeded to do a Steam Deck video every day for the last 6 months. I like the Steam Deck. I still have mine on order. It'll get here eventually. But
I've got mine reserved as well. I'm very excited.
But not that excited, because you can't hold your breath that long. It'll get here eventually. No. Hopefully by Christmas it'll be here.
I'm pretty sure I'm going to get mine around my birthday, like, and that's a few months from now. Like,
mine originally said Q2. Mine now says Q3. So, same. Yeah. Same. So eventually, that's eventually. Like, I'm okay with that, but my point is that it doesn't, like, Valve could sell 30 million Steam Decks and that'd be considered an amazing success. You know, they could sell 100 million Steam Decks and it would be an amazing success. But even then, that is not going to budge the needle on the number of Linux installs. Like, it's
well, I mean, I think a lot of people have this idea that, like, people are going to get their Steam Deck and be like, and think that, like, the average consumer, which I'm not saying the average consumer is, like, stupid. Like, please, no one take that as what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say is the average consumer is not interested in their OS. So no average consumer is going to get their Steam Deck, go, the thing that is on this is so amazing, I'm going to install it on my desktop.
Yeah.
Like, no, they're just going to be like, the Steam Deck's awesome. And then they're going to play with the Steam Deck.
Yeah.
Their Windows desktop is most likely not going to change, especially if they don't care about it. Like,
they just go to their Windows desktop and use Chrome just like they always have.
Exactly.
That's the way most people use their computers, and it's depressing because there would. In the Linux community, all of us nerds, we take pleasure in installing Gentoo and breaking Gentoo. You know, those types of things. Like, we take pleasure in that, right? All the nerdy testing. We like installing Arch Linux. We like even if you are just using Linux because you want to use Linux and you don't care about tweaking and customizing and stuff, you still have some drive to at least understand how Linux works and, you know, how your desktop works and stuff like that. You know, no one's ever used Linux and not known they used Linux. You know what I mean? Unless somebody else installed it for you and then they tricked you into it. You know, if you that's like the only way you can stumble into using Linux. The vast majority, like 99% of people, install Linux themselves, so they know they're using Linux. If you're a regular Joe Schmo, you probably don't know what you're running. Like, my mom doesn't know the difference between Windows 7 and Windows 10. Like, she knows she's running Windows, but that's only because I've harped on her trying to get her to switch to Linux so many times that she even knows that there's a difference, right? So, yeah, like most people just they don't know. We always generalize a little bit too much on like, well, yeah, it's the old people that don't know. But no, like there's a ton of young people who don't give a rat's ass what operating system they use.
Well, and it's kind of obvious too. Like, I mean, the guy who like he just wants to watch football, like probably doesn't care. Like, if you're just like if you're a massive like super mega football fan, that's all you care about. You love sports and like hunting on the weekends. Like the idea that like, oh, do you not also install Gentoo in your free time? Like, no, like I don't expect that guy to, and I don't know, like
what's a Gentoo?
exactly. Like I don't imagine that guy getting a Steam Deck and being like, this is great, so like my kids can play games on the road or like whatever, and being like, I wonder what's on this because I bet it would go great on my computer.
That's why I laughed at the Linux YouTubers who actually have a Steam Deck right now, who made videos about how it works so well when you plug it into a monitor and KDE comes up. Like for the Linux YouTuber audience, that probably is a really good video and really good content, right? But the average person who bought the Steam Deck is never plugging that thing into a monitor. Maybe they'll plug it into a TV.
Maybe. But here's the cool part. The first time like just somebody who like doesn't know shit about computers or like anything takes their Steam Deck and is like, well, as far as I know, I can dock it and play games on like the big screen, and like plugs it up, and you get a seemingly regular desktop, like, and it's just a computer. That one is going to be very cool for a lot of people. Like, I can see a lot of people going, "What the hell is this? Like, this is really cool."
Well,
like,
I mean, there's going to be some people who are going to say, "Well, yeah, this is really cool," but they're going to be the utter noobs that are going to plug it in and expect it to be like the Switch, where when you plug the Switch in, it just looks like a Switch. They have the same interface and stuff like that, right? And you know, it just starts like you plug it in and never had a Switch.
I want to agree with you, but I know for a fact that their desktop does, or I want to say I know for a fact, but as far as I've been told from someone who has a Steam Deck, like it's pretty obvious how to bring up big picture mode when you hit the desktop. So, like, if you, or like, you know, like the Steam Deck version of big picture, you know, like you get the overlay and everything just like you would have on the Steam Deck. So you can easily go from the desktop back there. But I don't know. I can definitely see some people being like, "Nah, what is this? I just want my console."
From the video I saw, it's like it's not hard. Like there's everybody knows icons on the desktop probably. So just clicking on Steam on the desktop, you know, works just fine. But there's that integration that the Switch has. When you like you can be playing your game on the Switch, plug it into its dock, and the game comes up on the TV.
Yes.
Like, I don't think that the Steam Deck is there yet. And I think that,
but in my opinion, I don't know. I think a lot of people would be blown away because, like, I don't know that I call that integration. I just call that like what the Switch is. Like, you're not going to dock the Switch and have it do anything other than bring up a game or something. Like, you can barely do shit on a Switch. Like, well, as far as I know, like it wasn't until recently where you could watch TV on the damn thing.
I understand that they're different things, right? I understand that they're different things, and you understand that they're different things. But regular Joe Schmo off the internet may not understand that they're different things because they're similar.
See, I disagree with that just because all of the marketing for the Steam Deck sells it as it's just a computer.
Yeah, well, I mean, you might be right, but I think I don't know. Maybe maybe I have less faith in the average intelligence of people than you do. Ozzy the
I don't
Terrible
know.
says they're.
I think most people who are going to spend like more than a couple $100 are going to also like do some research into what the product is. I I know there will be that handful of people out there who are like, I just bought it. I didn't know anything. It looked cool. And then we're upset like that it's not just a Switch. But I don't know. I feel like most people are gonna be like, I'm spending over a couple $100. Should probably see what this thing is.
Yeah. Anyways, Ozzy the Terrible says there needs to be better integration with monetary incentive like cryptocurrency bug bounties integrated with the OS and stuff. Um, man, I don't know. I don't know about cryptocurrency, but I do think that bug bounties work, and that's definitely something that the open source community doesn't do well. But that's just because there's not. I mean, like I'm sure Canonical and like Red Hat, they probably have bug bounty programs, but like ArchLinux, there's no way that they could do that. Regular open source projects not going to be able to do that because there's just not. I mean, there's not money for that, right? Because there's no big corporate backers. Those are the only two that we got. And
well, and I mean also like especially when Valve comes in, I don't think any cryptocurrency needs to be brought in. Just put out some bug bounties and then just give like people like $5 in their Steam account. Like, like
yeah,
there you go. Like, I mean, at least in my opinion, I think that would go a lot. Like I'd look for bugs. Like I'd be like, give $5-10 on my Steam account. Like they get like you can buy you can Vampire Survivors, which is a fantastic game on Steam. I'm definitely going to be playing it here before too long, just like live streaming it. It's $3 on Steam. Fantastic.
All right. So the thing is if you made the bug bounty too low to the point where anybody thought that they could do it, people would be reporting bugs that weren't actually bugs. So that would make triaging those bugs, like because if you made just like so like regular Joe Schmo could report a bug, like, and they can, but if they thought that they had an incentive to do this often, that they thought that they could make some money off from it, they'd report things that they just it's them doing something wrong. I mean, no, that's not going to be a huge thing, but it's going to happen.
I agree with you somewhat there, but I know for a fact that no matter what, you're going to get false bug reports, and quite a few of them, whether the bounty's $5 or $350,000.
The thing is, though, is when you've made that incentive to report bugs, like, and you've made it to the point where it's, like, yeah, it's only $5, but, it's still going to incentivize more people to look for bugs than would otherwise. And I think that that's a good thing. But when you incentivize people to report bugs in that way, you're also incentivizing the bad stuff too. So you're not only, when you incentivize that kind of thing, you're not going to just get the good bugs. You're also going to have to deal with the false reports and the things that aren't actually bugs and people who are just thinking that
even if you didn't put a dollar amount to it there, though, people would still do that.
But the thing is that without the dollar amount, people aren't going to report bugs, because we know that. Like right now, people don't report bugs at all because they have very little incentive to do so.
Exactly.
So,
well, I mean, like,
but if you put a monetary incentive on it, no matter what that monetary incentive is, you're going to have an influx of bug reports, which is, like I said, a good thing. But the good always comes with the bad. So there's going to be some kind of like
yeah, but that's still better than getting no bug reports.
And I think I agree with that. I'm just saying that because the open source community is so small, and the developers usually these projects are developed by one or two people, right? So the more bugs you have come in, the more you have to go through.
Oh, well, but that's the thing. We're talking about Valve. Like, small projects can't afford to do this, like, at all.
I was thinking more of the, overall FOSS community thing. I don't know. Anyways,
I mean, some probably could. Like, I mean, like, bigger projects could definitely afford to do it.
Well, I mean, with your
I mean, because it's not like you're going to pay out for every bug report you get.
With your $5 thing, like if somebody had like if somebody like raised like $10,000 or something like that and put like $2,000 of that towards bug bounties that are like $5 each, you know, I don't know if $5 is ever going to spawn a lot of stuff. So it probably wouldn't even be a big problem. Anyways, Martin says, I'm using mine Steam Deck as a work computer via VPN instead of the horrible Lenovo crap they give us. That's pretty freaking cool. Thanks for the super chat, Martin. Martin, you're exactly the type of person who would use that kind of thing, right? And I would be the type of person who would use the Steam Deck as a computer, and Tyler would be. I'm just not sure that regular Joe Schmo is that type of person. I think it's more like Tyler's going to be like, they're going to stumble into it, they're going to connect it to a TV, and all of a sudden have KD blown up onto an 80-inch screen, and realize that first they're gonna have to deal with scaling issues because things are gonna be really big. But also, you know, they're gonna like, wait a minute, I plugged this thing in, now I need a mouse and keyboard because it looks like Windows for the most part. But you know, so they're gonna assume then that they need a mouse and keyboard because it looks like an operating system, even though you could still use the buttons on the deck. I don't know. Yeah. I think
and they have a touchpad. So like, I mean, I feel like for the people who stumble into it and realize that they can use it as a computer, but they're like, I just want to play a fucking Steam game on my TV. Like,
yeah,
just use the touchpad, load up Steam, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'm right back here, and then just go on about your day. I don't know. I think it might be jarring for some, but I don't think the jarring aspect will be enough to where they go, I dislike this product.
Oh no, I don't. I think that once they realize what it is, they'll think it's cool. But that the initial confusion could cause some. Well, I mean, it will cause confusion, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I guess you're right. Yeah, like that. You never really. I don't think when you're giving someone a first impression of anything, like. And a first impression can go for like any part of a product experience, like not just opening the box, starting to play with it, but docking it. If that confuses the shit out of somebody, that's not a good thing.
That, and people are lazy. I mean, like astonishingly lazy. And when they come up against a barrier of any kind, no matter how easy it is to solve the barrier, because in this case, we're talking about literally moving the mouse up and clicking on the fucking icon. That's all.
We are all examples of that. We are all this person. But like everybody is.
Right. Like, people are inherently lazy. And that means that when they hit that roadblock, at least some percentage of the people who wanted to use their Steam Deck on the TV are just going to nope right out of it. They're going to go back, they're going to unplug it, and they're going to, you know.
Well, and even the person who might want to do it, if you're in a type of mood where you're just like, I'm just kind of done right now. I just want to do this one thing. You're just not in the mood for something, and you hit that confusion point. Even somebody who would typically go, yeah, like I'm down to learn about this or figure this out or whatever, like see what's going on here, might go, all right, I'm just done. I can't take this. Like,
yeah,
I just wanted to relax. Like that. I definitely understand that. Like, I don't know. The Steam Deck's one of those ones where like, I think a lot of people had a little bit too much faith in how much it was going to make Linux popular. Just because like when you're a fan of Linux, like you kind of hope that other people will be like, I want to be a fan of Linux too now. But when it comes to the Steam Deck, like at the end of the day, it's a handheld console, and that's what people care about. Like that's the cool part.
Yeah.
Like the fact that it runs Linux is neat for some people. Like for us, it's like, oh, that's fucking cool. Finally, somebody's like using Linux in a big product, in a massive product. But also, like most people are going to be like, sounds neat. Like, cool.
Well, then
plays games.
There'll be some people who have not a lot of knowledge of Linux, but maybe they have, or maybe they don't have current knowledge of Linux. Maybe they tried Linux back in the 90s, and they hear that this thing runs Linux. They haven't tried Linux since the 90s. They're like, oh, I don't know, man. gaming on Linux
Yeah.
isn't all that great. You know, they haven't.
Or they go, I'm gonna have to check this out because like there's no way that they're making a gaming console with
Like yeah, I've
Linux.
used I've used Wine back in the '90s. I
Yeah.
did this. It didn't work good. Yeah, it's the Steam Deck is very uh, it gives hope for a lot of things, but also I don't know. It makes me very cynical about a lot of people. Right. All
I,
right.
I just think the Steam Deck highlights that one day, like not only will other manufacturers start using Linux, mainly just because of the licensing aspect of it. Like with pretty much everything else, like every other option on the market, you're going to have to do some sort of licensing agreement.
Well,
Just
I
play
don't even
around
know
with
about the
that.
license. I mean, licensing is part of it, but most of it's money, right?
Well,
Like,
I mean that's what I'm talking about.
right,
Licensing costs money,
right.
so
There's one that was just released not too long ago. It was like $299. It has Windows on it. Like that company is not making any money off from that whatsoever because Microsoft charges $110 for a freaking license. You know what I mean? So that means, you know,
it can depend though
well, I
because
know that they get discounts, but I'm just saying that
oh well, I'm not even talking about discounts because like here's the thing, it's kind of just like like the Amazon tablets, like they can make deals where like essentially like Microsoft won't charge them because they let them add in a whole bunch of extra bits for like their brand partners, I guess,
yeah,
like like Candy Crush, like all that stuff. Like if you allow Microsoft to just load up all of their like sponsorships and like all their band, like just promote all of their partners with your install, you might not even have to pay for it. Like there can be a whole bunch of like loopholes in the way that they do business to like make it more feasible. But I don't know, at the end of the day, yeah, as a manufacturer, you may not have to spend any money on like the licensing aspect of it, but your end user is going to get a worse experience. Like
yeah.
there's nothing better than, like, I think we can all agree on this. There's nothing better than the experience of loading up a Windows install and seeing TikTok, Candy Crush, Spotify, um, uh, like Chimp Champ, whatever other brand partner that they have that just thrown on like
Yeah.
their system.
Like the thing is,
That was heavy sarcasm
we
too.
did that. Like you can still go out and buy a $200 Windows laptop, but you should not do so because there's like that company's gonna make their money. Anyways, Swayam, I apologize if I mess up your name there. Says unless desktop distros make money, I don't think they will become mainstream. Mainstream OSs require polish, and they should just work, and no one is going to work on that aspect for free. That's 100% true. Also, thanks for the super chat. And then not the engineer asked if I was talking about the AO Neo Air. I don't know what it was called. I just know it was like $299 or something like that, and it was really small. It looked cool, but I was hoping it would run Linux, but it didn't. It was a Windows thing.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah. So I think that we've beat this topic has taken us through many different things. So that was
Yes.
really good. So moving on to the last section that we do every week. So other podcasts have things called like picks of the week or tips of tricks of the week. Destination Linux has tips, tricks, and software picks, I think is what they call it, because they're rhyming geniuses. Us, not so much. We call our thing the thingy of the week. So Tyler, what is your thingy of the week?
Mine is Lolcat. I most people, I would assume, have heard of this, but if you haven't, fantastic. If you use terminals a lot, play around with Lolcat. Pipe shit into Lolcat. It's fun. Colorizes stuff, and I didn't have a good like idea for what I would want to throw in for the thingy of the week, and I just was playing around with Lolcat. I was like, well, you know what? I can just throw this in here. So if you haven't heard of Lolcat, it colorizes your terminal output, kind of gives it like a rainbow effect. It's not very functional, but definitely fun to play around with. So if you
I'm
haven't checked it out, it's fun.
I'm surprised there's not somebody in chat saying bloat, bloat, bloat.
Of course it is. It's not, again, it's not functional. It's fun. Like games are bloat, okay? but it doesn't mean they aren't fun sometimes. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I thought for sure there'd be somebody out there. Nah, this is blow. Why would I ever want to use that? All right. So my thingy of the week is an app. My thingy of the week is called Flat Seal, and it is a flat pack. It's the only way you could get it, and the only reason you'd really want it. But if you use flat packs, one of the coolest features of them is that you can download this thing called Flat Seal and control the permissions of the flat packs that you have on your system. So if you download something like Discord and you don't want to have access to your home directory for no apparent reason, you could turn off access to the home directory using Flat Seal for Discord if you've installed Discord through Flatpak. Same thing if you don't want it to have access to like the camera or the microphone or whatever. If you want to try to make Discord a little bit more privacy focused, you could do so using Flat Seal. But it's just not Discord. It's also things, literally anything that comes through Flatpak you can do this with. And it just gives you a really long list of permissions that are, for the most part, off by default because Flatpaks are supposed to be sandboxed. But if for whatever reason you get into an application that doesn't have access to the home directory, but you need it to, you can use Flat Seal to give it access to the home directory so you can get access to your pictures folder or whatever, whatever you need to do. And like I said, Flat Seal will give that permission to that really easy in a GUI interface, so it's not hard to use or anything. It's not like a command line interface or anything like that. So it's really good. And I install it all the time because permissions on Flatpaks by default are kind of all over the damn place. So that's mine. All right. So that is it for this week. We are coming up next week. I don't know what honestly, I have no idea what we're doing next week. I'm really bad at planning. Really bad at planning. So we do record this live every Thursday at 3:00 p.m. Eastern time. And for those of you who are watching live right now, you'll notice something different. It's not Thursday, it's Friday. But what you gonna do? So normally we record this live Thursdays, 3:00 p.m. Eastern time. That's 4 p.m. Central. You do the math on the rest of them. I can't be asked to do that. Anyways, that is it for this week. Before I go, I should take a moment to thank my current patrons. You can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/thelinuxcast. Thanks to Robert, Syd, Devon, Patrick, Fred, Kramer, Tridevil, Antoine, Unkle, Bonehead, KB, Griffs Lounge, Maeglin, Jackson, Tool, Steven, CyberGuyLinux, Garrick, Samuel, TGB, Keith, Andy, Gary, Ross, Mitchel, JDawg, Carbondated, Jeremy, Shaun, Odin, Marnie, Eduardo, archsinner, Elliott, Mislav, Marek, Cam, Joshua Lee, Peter A, Crucible, Dark Bennett, 6 Primus, PM, rlocone, and Phillip. God. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next week.